What up, my beautiful African family? This is your main man, Theo E.J. Wilson with African Diaspora News, and it is escalating in Nigeria. Oh, yes, it is. Along with President Trump making all kinds of threats that he's going to go ahead and invade Nigeria because of what's happening to the Christians there, along with the internet saying, hey, it ain't just happening to Christians, along with Nicki Minaj going to the United Nations and saying whatever she said that seemed to be right-wing aligned. Now we got Russia in the mix. And the fact that Russia is stepping in to, quote, help with Nigeria is symptomatic of the larger global Cold War at play, and the fact that Nigeria is BRICS aligned and that Africa is the staging ground between the war of the two great economic and military powers of this world is not surprising when you understand the resource wealth in Africa and how everybody needs a piece of it. So, Nigeria says, y'all having problems with some terrorism? Cool. We will help you out. But there's a little bit more to this aid than what meets the eye. Now, for those of y'all who are just catching up, the acronym BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, meaning that we got a whole block of emerging powers, powers that have been under the thumb of the West, that are now taking their seat as the power players in the world. And Nigeria, having aligned with them, means that they have a vested interest in showing up and showing out if Nigeria appears to be under any threat from within or from without. Now, this is not the first time that Russia has showed up in assistance to Africa. As you are aware, what's happening in the Sahel alliance between Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali could not have happened without Russian military assistance. The Wagner Group from Russia has about 20 contracts for military assistance all over Africa. And the fact that they're stepping in to help Nigeria symbolizes a sea change that's going on the continent, and making it clear that Russia is very invested in Africa being sovereign from the West control. Now, as you know, military assistance and economic assistance go hand in hand, because of the fact that if you have anything going on economically that challenges the West dominance, the West is likely to step in trying to break and destroy things to get you back on code with them, versus having anything that could stand on its own economically if it serves you. So essentially what's going on is this arms race that could take on some interesting dimensions, but we got some reporting and I'm going to dive into that. TRT Africa reports Russia is ready to support Nigeria's efforts against terrorism. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said Tuesday, praising Abuja's serious efforts in countering terrorist groups. Zakharova said Moscow's stance remains unchanged, noting that terrorism is a global threat and stressing Russia's readiness to provide assistance in coordination with the international community, UN agencies, and the African Union. Now, here comes Russia talking about the same things that America talks about, how the threat to women and children is paramount in their care for Africa and the reasoning behind them wanting to step in. And so, of course, what you see in this global sea change is Russia talking like America used to talk. America was like, we're going to step in and make sure that we fight threats to democracy everywhere because terrorism is bad. So this is a George W. Bush era talking point that Russia is now using to intervene in global affairs with the same kind of might and strategy that America used to do exclusively. The article from TRT Africa goes on to say Nigeria faces persistent violence from terrorist groups including Boko Haram, which has operated since 2002 from Borno State and remains active despite major losses inflicted by the Nigerian military in 2015. Renewed attacks on schools have prompted authorities to close educational institutions in several states, while President Bola Tinubu canceled a planned trip to South Africa for the G20 summit earlier this month due to rising security concerns. Now, y'all listen, as I've reported in other videos, Boko Haram has existed in Nigeria for a long time, as we know, right? Boko Haram, as they said in the article, started in 2002, but in 2011, thereabouts, we see Boko Haram get huge influence, huge power, huge funding out of nowhere. Or was it? Because 2011 just happens to also be the year that the West toppled Muammar Gaddafi, right? And they did it admitting that they were the ones funding the rebellion. This was, I remember, being reported on all over Western media. So those like militants didn't go anywhere. They didn't vaporize and just vanish into thin air, right? If Boko Haram is operating in Africa with Western backing, specifically in Nigeria with Western backing, that means that if there's military intervention coming from either Russian troops or Russian armaments in the hands of Nigerian soldiers, well, this could mean that certain Western powers are getting losses of life on African soil. This ostensibly turns Africa into a low-key Ukraine situation where we're waging a proxy war, except black folks gonna be dying. So why is it that the African leaders are so trusting of Russia specifically? Well, if you notice, Russia didn't colonize Africa. Russia had a couple of imperial endeavors in the Middle East, but during the Berlin Conference, Russia was invited, but they did not take a part. They didn't take part in actually dividing up Africa, as we know, creating these imperialist borders in Africa that still exist today. As you realize, ain't nowhere in Africa speaking Russian, right? They speaking French. They're speaking, English, of course. Some parts are probably speaking a little bit of Spanish and even Portuguese in Africa, but there ain't no places in Africa where they're speaking Russian due to imperialism. This is part and parcel what is leading to them being able to trust Russia right now. And adding to that, Chinese government officials and policies are creating more of an equitable trade agreement with African countries. And African leadership is jumping all on board. Why would Africa trust the West more than Russia, given Africa's history with the West? I'm just saying. As you know, Russia also showed up with some warships in Venezuela at the very same time that Trump is threatening to invade. And I do think that had Russia not done that, Trump would have been invaded Venezuela right now. So these countries are on the global chessboard between these two powers. What I think should happen, and what I think the Nigerians will likely do, is whatever armaments they get from Russia, they may end up reverse engineering and retrofitting for an African battlefield. That's what's already been done by Nigerian government programs. We've already seen it, where Nigeria is now starting to produce indigenously its own drone technology. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the Russian armaments that are going to be placed in Nigeria's hands also are reverse engineered and then manufactured in Africa as well. So we're going to be keeping our eye on this situation, and I hope that you will be too. Certainly you can find out more about it here at the African Diaspora News channel, and make sure that you continue to support us. As you know, we're being suppressed in the algorithm like nobody's business, so download our app. It's nothing but $9.99 a month. That's 13 cents a day. And if you like what I'm saying personally and you like how I say it, go ahead and follow my personal channel, Theo Cyrus Rising, right here on YouTube. My name is Theo E.J. Wilson. I'll see you next time where I saw you this time. Peace.